Hello, church. Pastor Benjamin here. This is the first installment of what we're calling the Going Deeper series. You'll see continuing clips throughout the months or throughout the year that are sort of follow-ups from a previous sermon, or in this case, Sunday 2 days ago. Going deeper will always relate to maybe going a little deeper into the sermon or a little deeper into an excerpt that came out of the sermon. So you'll see additional going deepers, like I said, throughout the month and the year. So I mentioned on Sunday that I'd go a little bit more into depth of the idea or the concept of Lent. Lent's not a new construct. It's not a new activity. It's actually been around for several hundreds of years, actually since 325 AD. It's a human construct or a Christian church construct. It's not something that's explicitly found in the Bible, but it's a season created for learning, growth, discipleship, and fruit. Lent, the Latin word for spring, really relates to this idea of a season where ground is being tilled in order to produce fruit. Right? In some places, in the spring, we trim trees or trim bushes so that later on in spring, the trees and bushes bloom even more. There are other scenarios where we actually do spring cleaning, right? You're literally in your yard, in your basement, in your attic, you're cleaning things out to create space maybe for new life in your yard, to get out the weeds, to get out the cobwebs. Well, I remember growing up my own family, spring cleaning meant lots of window cleaning, right? So the whole season of spring is often tilling the soil, creating space and room for abundant life and growth on the other side of the 2 or 3 months of spring. Sure, daffodils and lots of flowers grow in spring, but at the end of spring, everything is alive. It's all come in to full season. Now, there's a very specific reason we look at Lent and we look at 40 days of Lent. Again, looking at the 40 days is symbolic and it's a human construct, not something the Trinity said, you've got to do this as a sacrament. But it's a real helpful thing. So the 40 days are super symbolic. They're instrumental in us being aware of what in the world is Lent about. So 40 is a very common number all throughout the Bible, and it relates specifically to what Lent is supposed to produce. So if you look at one of the first 40 days experience, it would be the 40 days and 40 nights of the flood. So Noah and his family are in toil, they're in turmoil. They don't know where and when dry land is going to be, but they've got 40 days or 40 days and 40 nights of rain, which is quite difficult. But at the end of those 40 days, there's abundant life all over the countryside. They come out of Noah's Ark, and boom, there's a rainbow and there's beauty. But if you go a little further on down the history line, you've got the Israelites who are in the desert for 40 years. And those 40 years are specifically so that God constructed this space to develop a relationship with Him. He literally says, I need to take them on a longer journey to build trust with me so that God will become their God and He will become their people. And after 40 years, and probably a little bit longer, they finally get into Canaan, which is an abundant life. So you continue to see the symbology, the symbolism of 40 days of toil, trial, and kind of a learning ground, and then abundant life. And then Moses goes up to Mount Sinai for 40 days to receive the 10 Commandments. Which may sound punitive, but the 40 days produced the 10 Commandments, which are actually part of a love letter between God and humans. Right? It's a way for people to live freely with God, to abide with one another in community. It's not punitive, it's not setting kind of really difficult or infantile boundaries on people's lives. He's saying, Moses, come away with me to this learning ground for 40 days to get to know me. And then in the New Testament, we come to Jesus. Before he goes into his ministry, he's roughly age 30, he goes into the wilderness for 40 days. It really models the desert wilderness of the Israelites' experience. So he goes into the wilderness for 40 days. He fasts from food. I can't recall if he fasts from food and water, but he fasts in order to get close to God, to find his strength in the Lord, and to be tested by the evil one. And it's in that desert or learning ground where he's strengthened, develops thick skin for the battle of ministry. And right away, as soon as the 40 days are over, he's sent into ministry to begin cultivating life with other people, to set them free. And so we talk about this 40 days again as a learning ground for somehow God cultivating in you vibrancy in life at the end. So for us, Lent applies to 40 days because we're trying to create a season of what I would call scarcity. And please don't go over the edge when I'm like saying, I got to fast for 40 days, or I got to stop smoking cold turkey for 40 days, or not eat gummy bears for 40 days. But there is this idea of creating some kind of learning ground or scarcity of some form for 40 days. I'm not inviting you or saying enter misery or invite misery intentionally into your life, but create some kind of scarcity opportunity so you begin to miss something. You begin to long for that thing. The Israelites longed for Canaan. The Israelites longed for a relationship with God. Noah longed to be out of the ark into this vibrant new creation of the world that God baptized. We need to long to be closer to God. So the 40 days of something scarce creates this longing, let's just pick coffee, creates this longing for coffee. And at the end of the 40 days, when you have that first cup of coffee, you actually may say, no, I can live with that. But when you have that first cup of coffee, man, is it not amazing? Like, is it not amazing to withdraw from chewy chocolate chip oatmeal raisin cookies for a month and then finally have one? So what we're trying to do is create this season of scarcity where you experience longing, and then when you get it again, you are just thrilled. Thrilled to not death, but thrilled to life. So the idea is to relate that longing and that returned enthusiasm to how we're supposed to long for God. And then come Easter, we're prepared for that Easter sermon or the Easter experience or just the symbolism of having Jesus back. So again, just to kind of summarize, we're creating a season to experience some form of longing. And so that symbolically, we connect that to longing to God. So when I miss cookies for a month, I should be saying to myself, man, I love those cookies. I should love God exactly the same. Man, I love getting that cookie back. Man, I should experience God in the same exact longing, or actually much more intensified. So throughout those 40 days of having scarcity, when it comes to Easter, and we acknowledge that we need Jesus for 40 days, and we finally have that Easter resurrection victory, we should be having the joy and exuberance of God back in our lives, just like whatever it was we were fasting from or creating scarcity. So the application is quite simple. Would you consider giving up something for 40 days so that you experience receiving it back? And the longing and receiving it back somehow makes you connect this idea that I should be longing for God equally that much or much, much more. And I should be having this joy and enthusiasm for God, just like it would be if I was getting back coffee, cookies, Facebook, and obviously much more intensified to getting back Jesus. So may this Lent season be something new, may it be vibrant, and may there be a lesson ground for you for the next 40 days. See ya.